It's time for this month's presentation. Tonight's speaker volunteered for Raptor Rehabilitation of Kentucky Incorporated during her last 7 years working as an international B-757, B-767 captain for UPS. She was involved with some very big birds before she showed up here tonight. So after retiring 10 years ago, she founded Finger Lakes Raptor Center, Incorporated in Lodi, New York, where she cares for approximately 300 native wild birds a year. This evening, she'll be discussing licensing requirements to become a wildlife rehabilitator. What do you do if you find a sick, injured, or orphaned wild bird? Common reasons why wild birds come into rehab, how the rehabber cares for various species, and some interesting cases seen at the Finger Lakes Raptor Center. So please join me in warmly welcoming Morgan Hapeman as she presents Rehabilitating Wild Birds, a Professional's Perspective. There it is. There.
I'm Morgan. I start Finger Lakes Raptor Center because after volunteering at Raptor Rehab of Kentucky for 7 years, just loved doing it.
Morgan, can you move the mic down?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, thank you. Anyway, I just really loved rehabbing birds. I checked around, there was nowhere to do it here, so fine, I'll get my licenses and do it myself. So, what is wildlife rehabilitation? It's the process of caring for sick, injured, orphaned, or displaced wild animals with the goal of releasing them back into their natural habitat. It involves medical treatment, temporary housing, and specialized care for a variety of species. Nowhere on here does it say it's to bring your grandchildren to look at the birds because you don't know what else to do with them. Or, hey, I'm having an event, can you bring some of your birds over? No, this is rehab. It's a totally different thing than education birds. And in fact, it's against federal law for rehab birds to interact with the general public. Because you want them to stay wild. I want them to go back out in the wild and be wild birds. Or, they're sick or trying to recover, and who wants to stress them out with people looking at them? So, you do need to be licensed. In New York State, you have to have a DEC Wildlife Rehabilitation license. It says right on that license, this does not authorize you to rehab birds, migratory birds. And by migratory birds, I mean basically everything under the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, whether they physically migrate or not. Unless you have a federal migratory bird rehabilitation permit from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So you do have to have the federal permit to rehab birds. So you find the bird, you're not a rehabber, but you know it needs help. What do you do? So tonight at dinner, I made everyone get their phones out and download this app. I think one of the easiest ways is to have this app on your phone knows where it is, called Animal Help Now. If you're in your yard, if you're on vacation in Florida, you see a bird or an animal in distress, this is actually good all over the United States. It will give you contact information for the closest rehabbers and the closest vet clinics that see wildlife. So I would suggest, unless a bird is like about to be run over by a car or something catastrophic, maybe contact a rehabber first and make sure the bird needs help, the best way for you to contain it or whatnot. And this is a real quick way you can get someone's contact information. Now in Ithaca, it includes the Janet L. Swanson Wildlife Hospital, And I will say, if you have a bird that's injured or sick, that would be the best thing, because you could come all the way over to Lodi, where I am, and bring me the bird, and I'm gonna have to drive it all the way back here to take it to the hospital. I mean, not always, but a lot of times they do need vet care. Now, in that definition of rehabilitation, I said we provide medical treatment, but a rehab license is not a license to practice veterinary medicine. So there are a lot of things where you do need a vet to help you with. And in fact, one of the requirements to have that federal permit is you must have vet care available. And of course, I get all mine at the Janet L. Swanson Wildlife Hospital. If you don't have a cell phone, there is a website, the ahnow.org, and you could look something up there. So, what are some common reasons birds come into rehab? And this by no means is, and I have 2 pages here, just warning you, it's not all of them. And you know, when you think you've seen everything, you haven't, there'll be something else. And it's not in any particular order. But do get, especially in the winter, a lot of the raptors that I get are hit by cars. Hunting's really hard. A lot of times hunting by the road might be the easiest option, but you know, they don't know anything about that car coming down the road. Window and building collisions, very common year-round when all species. Entanglement. Oh my gosh, 2 years ago, I had like 9 different types of entanglement. It's like, what else can birds get caught up in? One was a Cooper's hawk somehow flew into a person's house, flew over to the window and got tangled up in the window blinds. I mean, you don't expect that. And I had a ring-billed gull that was actually tangled in some vines on the beach, so a natural thing. And he was entangled bad. I mean, we worked for a long time with him, but his injuries really weren't survivable. And that was a natural thing, so who knows? But anyway, lots of entanglement. Lead poisoning, totally preventable if you don't use lead ammo. And that's not the only source of lead, but anyway, that's the main thing, so preventable. Rodenticide poisoning, totally preventable. Don't use it. You know that it doesn't kill the mice or rats right away, and they're out, and the red-tailed hawk, ooh, that might be easy meal, he's not running too fast. And then they get poisoned. Dr. Hoff at the Wildlife Hospital did a study on rodenticide poisoning and red-tailed hawks in New York State. I don't know how many red-tails she tested. I mean, well over 200, I know that. 68% of them had some level of rodenticide poisoning in them. I mean, that's tragic. And orphaned, you know, I found a baby bird in my yard. I don't know where the nest is. I will say the Wildlife Hospital, if you find a baby bird out of the nest that's not injured, is not sick, they don't want to see that. They don't have time for that. It doesn't need vet care. But in the coming baby season, another month, oh my gosh, I'll be getting those calls. So here's what I have been seeing a lot. Red-tailed hawks for sure, but other species too. Now, blood parasites might not be the most common thing, but I would say that this past year, about 25% of the red-tailed hawks I got in, and 100% of the red-tailed hawks that came in as fledglings had blood parasites. And there's 3 main ones. Leukocytozoan are really bad. The Plasmodium, which is the malaria, and then there's a third one, I forget the name, it's real similar to malaria. I'm lucky when my birds go to wildlife hospital, they test stuff. It's just a blood smear and they can tell right away. It's, oh, well, which one did they have? Oh, they had all of them. And the birds are really, really sick. And if you were really, really sick, are you gonna, for one thing, they just fledge. They probably don't even know how to hunt. And you just don't feel like it, and they're, really in bad shape. But the good news is it's treatable. And sometimes, especially the leukocytozoan, you do the traditional, like malaria type treatments, and they're resistant. And then you just go to a different drug. So it could take quite a while to treat them, but it is treatable. The birds come in and they're tested, and you know what you need to treat for. This past year, it's different every year, but the West Nile virus was really bad this last year, and especially in red-tailed hawks. As you know, both of the ends, the big reds babies last year, both succumbed to West Nile virus. I had quite a few young red tails come in with it. At the beginning of when we were seeing it this year, they all died. They were at the wildlife hospital with everything imaginable. Like if you see, on the TV when someone's in ICU and there's tubes and this and that. I mean, to that level of care, and just couldn't survive it. A little later in the season, started getting young. I don't think I saw it in any adults this past year, but getting the juvenile red tails in, they were really sick, tested positive for West Nile virus, but they did survive it. One that was crazy, some people were out boating. I'm on Seneca Lake, and they were out like a mile out. And they're like, what's out in the water? It was a red-tailed hawk. And they picked him up, they brought him right to me. And yeah, he was really sick, but you don't know for sure what's going on. Like, how did he end up in the middle of the lake? It was West Nile virus, so did he just think, oh, I'll fly where I normally do, and oh, I'm too tired? And I don't know. But he did survive, and he was released. But that was unusual to come from the middle of Seneca Lake. And I'm sure you've heard of the highly pathogenic avian influenza. The particular strain that we've had the last few years is really bad, is the H5N1. And yes, I do. I've had some red tails with it this year. I've had a Cooper's hawk with it. So various birds, but geese, especially snow geese, at least over on Seneca Lake where I am, just hundreds of them along the shore, dead. The avian influenza, there's no cure for it. And waterfowl, I've heard different things, like I've heard that mallards don't get sick, but they carry it. I don't know for sure about that. And geese, I've had several geese with it, and there's no doubt they have it, but I think they can last a few days with it. A raptor, at least in my experience, from when they first show symptoms to being dead, is less than 24 hours. And if they go to the which I take them to the wildlife hospital, I don't want them near my other birds. If they have symptoms, they just euthanize immediately. They're tested, but the test takes a full day. The lab isn't open on weekends. If you come in later in the day, it's going to be the end of the next day. If it's not the weekend, and they don't wait if they have symptoms, because that's just the reality. So that's something pretty bad that we've been dealing with this winter. It's really kind of overwhelming. Lots of extra work making sure I'm not contaminating my other birds and all of that. So this is the Finger Lakes Raptor Center. It's a lake cottage that my husband's grandfather built in the 1940s. We weren't using it for anything, so I had a building from day one. There's no insulation, there's no running water. I do have pretty good electrics in it though. But I have a lot, pretty good amount of room for starting out in rehab. Winter's challenging because no insulation. The two, what would be bedrooms, I have plug-in heaters, and the birds don't need tropical. Red-tailed hawk is a wintertime bird here. But if they're, injured or sick or whatever, trying to recover, they don't need to spend all their energy staying warm. So I can at least keep them 55 degrees, and they can just concentrate on getting better. The rest of the cottage is pretty cold, but I make do. It's okay. So, just some of the things I get in. Baby season, you get so many songbirds. This is a fledgling robin found in someone's driveway in Interlaken, and he had a broken leg. I did the splint for songbirds is just layers of paper tape. It does a really good job, and it's actually quite easy to remove. So I don't remember how long the splint was on. It isn't a real long time, like 7 to 10 days. And removed it. He did great and was released like any other robin. So this ring-billed gull had a broken wing. Did have to wrap it. And it's funny. This was a couple years ago. I wrapped. I wasn't even thinking, oh, it's St. Patrick's Day and he has his green on it. But he also he was taken to Cornell for the radiographs and just see for sure what we're dealing with. But he did make a full recovery and he was released. So this is a young hummingbird. So this, I guess, is the smallest species I deal with. I don't get many of these, thank goodness. He actually was pretty short term, but I just wanted you to see like the setup. You decorate for whatever species is coming in. You release them, and it's a totally different species. Okay, I have to redecorate now. So I think I only had him it was like a window strike. He wasn't really injured, and he got released. So this, in the late spring, summer, the songbird babies come in, and most of them need to be fed every 30 minutes. Wrens might be like every 20 minutes, sun up to sundown. You don't feed them at night. So this one is sort of just a fledgling. Obviously, he's not in his nest. He's hopped out, and he's hopped partway out of his little cage, which is okay, because I know he's not really going anywhere. He just wants the mealworms. And you notice it's like a mesh cage, like bird cages, like you think of a bird cage, the wire. The absolute worst thing you can use for a wild bird, because it will just trash their feathers. You get it between the wire. So this is an outside aviary, just to set up, just to show you, you gotta do different things. Obviously this is an adult, and you don't get a whole lot of adult songbirds. It's mainly either the nestlings or fledglings mostly. So these are some young screech owls, and they're actually out in a fairly large flight cage, but they're really still branchers. And they would go right up that branch to get to a higher perch. And, but they're right there ready to fly any minute. As soon as you can start flying, the better. And for the raptors, for the most part, their housing's pretty sparse. It depends on the species, but you don't really do as much, extra decorations for them.
How did you happen to have two young owls?
Oh, I think I had 10 of them in this particular flight cage.
Oh my.
I do believe these were siblings, but I get a lot, they're the same age, they'll be housed together out there, which is good because they learn from each other. So this turkey vulture came in. Someone saw him by the side of the road. He had been eating a fox, and she thought he was dead. He was laying there. And when she drove by, she noticed he opened his eye, and she's like, ooh. So went back and got him, and called me, asked if I could meet her. And I said, sure, I can do that. And I pull up, I was like, why is she sitting out on the curb? What's going on here? She just had him loose in her car, and he wasn't as incapacitated as she thought. So I did, and she was in the process of moving. She had like a dresser inside her car, and like baby seats, and I'm in there climbing over all of this trying to get this turkey vulture. That's what I remember about him. But it was a little confusing. In rehab, I hadn't taken him to the vet yet. He seemed okay. I didn't feel broken bones or anything, like what's going on. But he didn't really eat. I'm like, that's kind of strange. And at the wildlife hospital, the same thing. We're like, well, we don't really see anything here until they did radiographs. He had a broken jaw, and we just couldn't tell that initially. You didn't see it. And that's something we wouldn't normally feel, I guess. So he did have a broken jaw, so, at first like a liquid diet, and then, little bits of food. But you have to think about, I want to get this bird ready to be released. How do vultures eat in the wild? They stick their heads inside of things and stuff. He had a broken jaw. How is that working? So I don't have a picture of it, but the Kong balls, like for your dog or something? So I got one of those, stuffed it with some pieces of rat. He would not eat in front of me, but I'd go away for like 5 minutes, come back. It was clean as a whistle. And he'd have to stick his bill inside that to get that food out. So I said, yeah, he's using it okay. So there's just all kinds of crazy things that you have to think of to do. Depending on what the situation is or their injury. I never know if this video's working. Woo, there it goes. So this is it's a 50-foot long flight cage, which is the size you would use for red-tailed hawks, and that is a red-tailed hawk. I'm not in there. I'm not making him fly. He's just doing that on his own. So that, there's some people use creants, some people use flight cages. Well, in Kentucky we had flight cages, so that's what I know. And I haven't learned creants, but the flight cage is the thing to me. And the thing is that I like is on their own, if they feel like flying laps, they can. Where creants, you gotta put all equipment on them, you got to take them out. It has its purposes for sure, but anyway, I like my flight cage. So this is just getting into some kind of interesting birds I've gotten. This was, I think, 2022. Late April, 10 o'clock at night, I get a call from the head of Sampson State Park. And I didn't even know he had a house in the park on the lake. And he says, there's this big tree in front of my house, and I've been watching this eagle up there all day. And he just fell out of the tree and landed in this shrub. And I'm like, fell out of the tree? And it's when the avian influenza was first coming out. Oh my God, he must have that, because why else would you just fall out of the tree. So I said, I'm only 15 minutes away from there, so let me get some things together, I'll be right up. And then his wife met me inside the entrance. Oh my gosh, it was so dark that night. I mean, just dark, and there's no lights inside, you know, like to drive. And we're on roads I didn't even know existed back there. So we got to where he was, and I had taken capture and transport class at a wildlife rehab conference. And one of the things they say to do, which I almost never did, just stop and take a photo. And it gives you time to just take it in, what am I gonna do? Well, I have helped rehab a lot of eagles. I can barely hold one. So it's like, I better have a good plan before I try to capture this bird. I'm gonna take a photo. So the park manager's holding his flashlight on the bird, and you know, I just snapped that with my iPhone. So that, he was maybe 6 feet up. So I said, okay, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go around behind them and, you know, grab them, which I did. He would not let go of that shrub. Next thing I know, this guy has like, you know, the loppers. So he had to cut the branches. But anyway, got him in the crate, got him home. Again, I was thinking, well, he could have avian influenza. So it wasn't like super cold out. It sure wasn't too hot. I had a lot of other birds. I know what, he will be in my mobile isolation unit for the night, the back of my car. So, of course, in a big eagle-sized crate, I made sure, you know, he was as comfortable as I could get him. And then the next morning, that's just a little photo I took. And I'm like, okay, well, my husband will take him straight to Cornell because he probably has bird flu. So that afternoon, it was a Saturday, the intern vet on duty that day called me and said, oh, I just euthanized the eagle. He was neurologic, you know, I put him down. And I'm like, oh, I didn't see him being neurologic. And that is, for the bird flu, they're very neurologic. They're all the like head stuff, almost like they're drunk so much. And a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times I have corneal edema, which just makes their eyes look cloudy. Those are very clear. And I'm like, well, I didn't see that. And it used to be all eagles were necropsy. Oh, new rule. Avian influenza is not necropsy. And it's like, I want to know what happened. You know, can you necropsy that bird? And they don't actually do it. It goes to the DEC lab. So they did send him for a necropsy, and what he actually had was West Nile virus. Already knew his test had come back negative. He did not have bird flu, which is why I'm like, well, then what happened? And with West Nile virus, they definitely have seizures, and it's not like you're having a seizure all the time. So when I looked at him, he looked fine. So in a way, it's like, well, gosh, you know, we could have tried, or he didn't have bird flu. But if he's having seizures of West Nile virus, it's not likely he would have survived it. But the other thing with this bird is he was banded. He also had a color band, which is like for special things. So of course I sent the federal band, you know, regular aluminum band number in on my computer like right away, and it comes right back, oh, there's a problem with the number you submitted. And that's what it says when a band's really old. And really for a bald eagle, it wasn't that old. He was only 19. So he'd been banded 19 years before, and from that all you know is in New York State. Wow. So like, what does this color band mean? So, you know, I Google it. He had a blue band with white numbers, and it's bald eagles east of the Appalachian Mountains. And then if it's the blue with white, it gave an email address, so it was some DEC person. So I emailed it, but you know, it was like a Friday night. And I'm like, 19 years, who knows, is the guy even alive? I don't know, but I emailed it. So that Monday, a different person from the DEC did contact me, and yes, he was banded along the Cattaraugus River, or the Allegheny River in Cattaraugus County, blah, blah, you know, in the nest. And then, of course, I had him on my Finger Lakes Raptor Center Facebook page. It had something, I'm not into, like, if I had 100 likes or something, it's like, wow. It was something like 89,000. I'm like, what?
Wow.
And a lot of really nice comments, and someone said, oh, probably so-and-so banded them. Next thing I know, the guy that actually banded this bird did message me. And I mean, that was kind of amazing. Here's someone that says, oh, I remember him, yeah, he was the only one in the nest and all of that. So that was just kind of cool. I mean, sad ending for the bird, but there's a lot of those, unfortunately. So here's another interesting case. Doesn't that look horrible? So Seneca County 911 calls me, and you know, had a school bus hit a red-tailed hawk. And I thought she said Seneca Falls, because it's, you know, I'm in Lodi. Seneca Falls is like a half-hour away. Everything's always up there or whatever. And I had someone coming from east of Ithaca bringing me some baby wood ducks. And it's like, okay, I don't have time to go to Seneca Falls back. No, South Seneca. Oh, I'll be there in 10 minutes. So I was at South Seneca High School. So I go up, and of course I took a crate and everything, and I get up there, and they already had like the grill tilted out. And the transportation supervisor, the two top pictures, had taken those photos, and I asked, hey, can you text those to me? So I sent those to the wildlife hospital. I told my husband, okay, I'll be home in 10 minutes. You gotta take this bird straight to Cornell, because obviously it needs major help. And so they knew what was coming. And I get home, and I go to take the crate out of my car to put in my husband's truck. I'm like, why is this bird standing up? I mean, I was like, what? No broken bones.
Oh my gosh.
No lacerations. Did have some bruising. And when I went to get him out, I just hopped up on the engine, and they're like, that's hot, you know, who cares? I'm getting this bird. And I could not get his fat head through those bars. So those guys just spread the bars apart so I could get him out. So anyway, from those first pictures, and that's the bus driver releasing him. 15 days. And Melissa Grew took that photo of the release. And isn't he, the bird there, isn't he handsome? It was a male, and obviously a mature adult. Released him right back exactly where, you know, he was hit. And the bus driver and a whole like bunch of people related to that. They came in the school bus. You might not want to see that. But anyway, released him right there. His mate, and it was late enough that the offspring had fledged. His mate and one of the fledglings met him. I mean, it was like, wow. So that, I mean, it just looks so dramatic, but it was one of the easiest rehabs I've had.
Wow.
Yeah, so you never know. But I will say the bus driver, because BOCES contacted me, they do their training. I didn't even know they had training or supervisors. I don't have children, so I don't know anything about school bus drivers and stuff. He did everything exactly like they train. So you don't swerve. If he'd swerved, that bird would have had broken wings. You don't slam on the brakes. If he'd done that, who knows what he would have had. No. He saw the bird. He assumed it would fly out. He knew he hit, but it didn't. He knew he hit it, but he just, you know. And there was a monitor in the bus who called the supervisor immediately. So when the bird was hit till I was there to get him, couldn't have been more than 15 minutes total, because he went back to the school. All the kids on the bus were special needs kids. They didn't know anything had happened. They had arrangements to get them bused home and all of that. It was just everything about it. The human interest, was just incredible. So sometimes you have, it looks bad, but just the human interest aspect I like. And I will say a lot of rehabbers, I hate people, I don't want to deal with them. I've met some incredibly nice people, that brought me birds. Some of them I'm like super good friends with to this day. So yeah, there's a lot of really good people that help wildlife.
I have a question.
Oops, I don't know why he's there again, what's going on? Yes,
The two top pictures, one of them, the bird looks blue. Why does he look blue?
for the red-tailed hawk.
Just the lighting.
I think it's the lighting, and it's actually some of the white. It also had been raining. It was pretty wet. He was very wet, and I think it's the lighting on the feathers.
Okay, that's just like that.
But it's actually where the wet white feathers are.
Okay.
I don't know why he's in there again. That's not right. So this is your bird. She's the person that rescued this bird. Red-tailed hawk was in the winter, went to Cornell, lead poisoning. So, see how his feet are all wrapped up? And this picture, probably Melissa took this picture too. This is from the Wildlife Hospital, it's not mine. He doesn't have anything wrong with his feet. But lead poisoning, lead's a neurotoxin. And they have seizures and they clamp their feet. I mean, he could really hurt himself. So that's why they're bandaged like that. So when he has a seizure, he can't hurt himself. They have right in the hospital, they have a lead analyzer. It's a blood test, takes literally just 5 minutes, it's easy. A lot of bigger rehab centers have the lead analyzers. I'm not a big rehab center, and I can take them to Cornell, so I don't have one. So they go from 0 to 60. Normally, if it's 12, it's like deciliters per milliliter or whatever. You start treating. If it's above 60, the analyzer will just say high, and normally that's yes, it's really high. Well, it's Cornell. They have other labs. This bird had the highest lead reading they had ever had, or at least that survived, 1900. And it's like, what? So a lot of chelation treatment, it's actually injections, and it combines with the lead to get it out of the blood and stuff. So he went through several of those, and then, came to me, and I, at first I had him inside in a big cage, like, let's see how he's doing, is he perching okay? And eventually had him out in a big flight cage, and then he's like flying laps and doing great, so, okay, I'm gonna release him now. And when I took him to release, I knew the road he was on, but it didn't seem safe, like to park and get out and let him go, where I told you was. So there was a fire station, like real close, and with a big open area. So that's where he got released, or she, I'm sure it was a female. So when, didn't know, winter, is it a local bird? Is it maybe one from Canada? Decided, ooh, I'll just go down to New York and be a little warmer. No idea, release them. And a pair of red-tailed hawks goes by. I'm like, what? But there was no interaction, so, okay. Then someone's like, I have another red-tail. We look up, and there's a red-tail up there, and then she went up and joined them, and they're circling around together. So I would assume it was her mate. It's like, wow, I can't believe this is happening. So this,
Morgan.
Oh, I'm sorry.
What's the scenario where a raptor would get lead poisoning?
People use lead ammo. When that lead, like let's say a deer, goes in the body, it shatters
So maybe
into
eating a deer and getting,
a million pieces.
okay,
If they, they don't chew. They just tear off pieces of meat and swallow.
okay.
A piece of lead the size of a grain of rice is enough to kill a bald eagle. And this is a lot small, the red tails. This is a lot smaller than a bald eagle, yeah.
At the time I saw some of the x-rays from that bird, there was a whole bullet in there, a whole round
Wow.
cylinder piece
That's,
of a bullet
yeah.
in his
But
body.
luckily they were able to get it to pass real quick.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
the
went out of their
remember.
body.
But anyway, that's how they get it. And it's, don't use lead ammo, problem solved. And a lot of, it isn't just raptors, grackles, blue jays, they'll eat on that too and get lead poisoning. And of course, all kinds of little mammals and vultures for sure.
Wounds
Yeah.
in the lake.
And here's a problem with lead poisoning, avian influenza, and to some extent West Nile virus. A lot of the symptoms are the same. I had a turkey vulture from Waterloo, very neurologic, took him into the, wildlife hospital. No, he didn't have avian influenza, he had lead poisoning, real high, and that bird ended up not surviving it. A few days later, different person, but Waterloo, like within a block, another turkey vulture. And, but avian influenza, nope, it's lead poisoning. I said, well, I guess that makes sense. So a few days later, a third person brings a third turkey vulture within that same spot, exact same symptoms. Luckily, I had all my PPE on and still doing everything. It wasn't lead poisoning, it had avian influenza. So you can't let your guard down because I could have infected all my other birds. But that's what we have to deal with. You don't know. They're not telling you what they ate or, was it a deer with lead in it or was it a goose that died of bird flu? So do not get many northern saw-whicks in rehab. I've had a few, but you don't get a lot of them. You certainly don't get baby ones. So the top left is what he looked like when I got him, in juvenile plumage, found in a storm drain in Cortland. Like, what? And there had been storms, so he must have been washed out of the nest and washed into there, I don't know. So, did real well, pretty easy, except on the back of his head, and I never could get a picture of it. He had a big bald spot. It seemed huge to me, but it was probably the size of a dime, which on that's a pretty big spot on a bird that small. So it's like, well, I can't release him like that. I don't think he'll get sunburn. They stay in pretty thick vegetation. But how about when it gets cold? Will he get too cold or whatever? Seriously, if you don't have feathers to protect yourself. So I knew that they molted their face and body feathers that first summer. So let's see what happens. Now, the two top pictures, I think it's just the lighting. I don't think he really looked that different. I think it was just lighting. But then you see like in late August, pretty scraggly looking because he's, dropping feathers and new ones just starting to come in. And, a couple weeks later, that's what he looked like on the right. And I couldn't even figure out where that bald spot was because there were so many thick little feathers there. So that, that was fantastic and he was released. So just, you just get crazy things sometimes. So now this looks blue. It's just where it's iridescent is the way his feathers are so shiny. It's not really blue there. So last year, I had 2 juvenile common ravens. I do not get many ravens. The first one I know this was the first one, found on a trail over by Cayuga Lake. And they never really could figure out what the injury was, but some kind of nerve damage. He couldn't use one leg very well at all. He'd been on the ground a long time, so the end of his tail's a little ratty. That's how I know it's that one. He also possibly had aspergillosis, which is a fungal infection in the lungs. Those spores are everywhere. We're breathing it right now. But if you're compromised, it starts taking over. Don't know for sure if that's what he had, but he was treated with the drug for that, and it did go away. So I had him. It wasn't, like I said, his walking was a bit odd. And since I had one, another juvenile came into the wildlife hospital, and it was one from Tacanic Gorge. And, oh, can you take this one? Sure. That one had some gastrointestinal parasites that I did not want this one getting. So they were in separate flight cages. And the other one, they were young. I thought, he's young. Let's just get him back with his parents and his siblings. But also, like this guy, when I would go in his flight cage, like how far away can I get from that person? Which they should be. And the other one was, oh, let me walk up to you because you might feed me. I'm like, I don't really know the full story on that one, but something wasn't right. So decided we'd release them, and a bunch of my volunteers went. We took them back and made sure, we saw the parents and siblings. They could care less about them. They didn't have any interest in those other ravens. And we're like, wow, now what? So I brought them back home. But they had resolved their parasite or fungal issues, put them together. It was incredible. That other bird never approached me again. This one must have told him, you don't go near those people. And the other thing that was incredible, this one was actually a better flyer, but if he wanted to walk along the perch, sometimes it was a little dicey. And the Tacanic one would come and help him. I mean, it was like, what? I mean, they were just so, I don't work with them much, so I didn't know day to day what it was gonna be like. And getting them all kinds of toys and enrichment and stuff. And they were in a sort of small flight cage, because I had so many red tails and birds in my other one. So once I got them all released and could put them in the really big flight cage, it was amazing. I mean, they both are flying great, and was able to release them both together. So it turned out really good. So you all, not these 2 birds that you see, but you're gonna see in a second 2 juvenile red tails flying. And I'm pretty sure it's the only time they are 2 sisters flying. And I bet some of you know these birds. It's kind of slow motion, and then they're crazy at the end. And no one else has ever seen this video before. So this is, I think, early September of 2022. Any guesses on who those 2 birds are? Oh, first let me show you, well, let me back up. So on the bottom is L4, and the other one that looks like flying a little bit higher was L3. And L4 was released shortly after this video. She had a pretty easy rehab, didn't take long. I will say L3 was probably the most complicated case I've had. She had things things wrong with her that the vets never knew. They couldn't, there wasn't any way for them to know. Maybe if they had a bigger budget and an MRI, they might have known something. But anyway, L3 had a coracoid fracture. It's a bone like between the shoulder and the breastbone. We don't have that. And a lot of their flight muscles attached to a very, very common blunt force trauma injury. Very common. And I believe she hit either a window or the side of the building. That all healed fine. In fact, later on, the vets is like, we had to check her records. We couldn't even tell which side it was. It had healed so well. But this is a photo of L4. I want you to notice where his legs are, straight down. This is L3. See how her legs are off to the side? That isn't normal. And it's not a coracoid thing that you would see. I mean, it's compensating for something with her flight. The other thing I know at an instant, seeing these two, which one's L3, because she doesn't have her middle tail feathers. When I got her, one of the middle feathers was missing. I thought, that's odd. You know, they get feathers banged up all the time in caging and stuff, like outside ones. Why would one in the very middle be missing? But you know, whatever. Then more. So she started in the middle and bilaterally chewed her feathers off of her tail. And of course, see, no one knew this. It's like, why isn't she released? What's going on? So something, I don't know if it hurt, if something itched, I don't know. And her feet or legs like that isn't normal. So this, it looks a little weird. You know, these were just taken off the video. So that's L3 on top, and it's a little hard to tell, but it looks like her wings are pretty level, but her body is actually rotated. It's not straight. And her tail, it looks relatively straight there, but when I would watch her fly, her tail would be kind of off a little bit too. So something, I don't know, some nerve damage. She had something going on. So that's why it took so long. And then, I don't really, where she chewed, there really wasn't enough, I didn't feel like to imp feathers. And I wouldn't imp a whole tail and release. I just think that's a little too chancy. So I waited for her to molt, molted in a beautiful red tail. Both of these birds, I believe that's the last photo, yeah. Their releases are well documented on the Lab of Ornithology website, so if you want to see them go, it's there. So so she got released, but I had her over a year. And normally it's 180 days is all you're allowed, but you can get extensions. I mean, she needed to molt, and I mean, that's a valid thing. So that's it. Any other questions or?
Oh, there are questions?
Oh,
I see hands.
Do you ban birds before you release them?
okay, that's another different license. And I don't have that license, so I don't. I would like to have some birds banded. To ban is, you can only ban stuff in your project. I did have a friend as an undergrad had a project studying red-tailed hawks at the game farm. And I took 3 of my juveniles, because you know, they don't have a territory. I thought, ooh, this will be great. They'll have easy eating all winter. Doesn't matter where they're released as long as it's suitable habitat. What he learned from his study, the adults don't let any of the juveniles stay there. Well, I didn't know that. But one of those birds, who's about 5 months later, was found down in it, right in Ithaca, I think in downtown. You know, of course, taken right to the Wildlife Hospital. And it's one that had had West Nile virus. I'm thinking, oh my God, did I miss something? Was he still sick and I didn't know it? And, you know, what did I do wrong? So, of course, they did euthanize him, full necropsy, absolutely no sign of any infection or anything, so no. And obviously 5 months later, he was hunting. He unfortunately ate some kind of really bad poison. And that was that. So, I mean, I would like to ban some, but I don't personally have that license. So someone else had a question? Yeah.
If you get an animal in that is severely injured or sick, and you know they're not gonna make it, do you have the authority to euthanize them? Or shoot them
Absolutely, yep.
before, so that you don't have to wait for them to suffer to go to see a vet?
Yep.
So you can do it. Good.
Yes, rehabbers can do that. Yes, I'm not into them suffering. Yeah.
Can you comment on your PPE that you use when you go out to catch a bird?
So, you're asking what I use?
Yeah.
So I have disposable gowns, gloves, mask. If someone's just handing me a box with a bird in it in a parking lot somewhere, I'll probably just do that. If I have to physically walk, like on a beach, to pick a bird up off the ground, then I also have boot covers, disposable boot covers on. And that's what I use. And then all of that gets, inside out and tossed and anything else? Yeah.
There's a comment. Mallards can get H5N1 and die with it, but probably 50% of the birds may survive, but they will spread the virus.
Yeah, and I think it depends on the species, how they handle it. But I'm wondering too, if maybe they're getting a little bit of immunity just in the environment. I don't know.
No, it is based on the infection type it happens, and there's very specialized work. I can
Right.
talk to you privately about it. But within the duck species, there's a large difference in fatality rate after infection. So it is not for every duck species the same.
Yeah, exactly. Like mallards don't seem to be as bad, but other ducks that aren't mallards are. Yes, absolutely. I'm not an expert on it, I just know what I've seen.
He is an expert.
Yes, obviously. So thank you. I would appreciate any information. And I especially want to know, are some mallards having symptoms and dying from it?
Yes, that can.
That's what I thought. I have someone that's an expert in his own mind. This is a cat. But I haven't personally taken in a mallard with it. But I know on Seneca Lake, there's been a lot of mallards with it. But I didn't know, do they just catch some birds and test, or were they cadavers? I don't know. But, I'd love any information on that, because don't know enough. And that, the PPE, that's all I know to do. University of Minnesota hadn't gotten here yet, but it was coming, did a webinar. I got a lot of good advice from there, but rehab like, not.
So your mask, is that a shield covering your whole face, or?
It depends on the bird. A lot of times I hope my glasses are working, but if it's something like really flopping and all, I do have face shields. I just don't normally wear one, because normally the bird is.
No matter what.
Okay, good to know, thank you. I will start doing that. Yeah, any other advice, please? Because I'm not really that worried for myself, but I don't want to get my other bird sick. So, thank
Is there any
you.
movement to get lead shot banned, or is there any education to get people to switch to steel shot?
Oh, there might be some, but they won't do it.
Is steel shot not as good, or?
So, I don't know. It's a problem. Anything else? Okay.
What's the most interesting species you've worked with?
I don't know. For sure, I'm a red-tailed hawk person. That's my species. And I like hawks and falcons. Yeah, owls are okay. Most people don't like the owls. I mean, yeah, they're okay, but I really like the hawks. But I don't know that they're the most interesting. I don't know. Actually, those ravens are pretty cool.
Yeah.
I mean, just, I probably learned way more than they did. So, anything else?
Yes.
Yeah.
So what would be the training process for somebody who wants to go this, somebody who divided your experiences in Kentucky? And how would that relate to the permitting? You have to take exams?
Yeah, so for the state license, you go on the DEC website for, rehab rehabilitation and, wildlife rehabilitation. All the study material is free, download it. The test questions are there, download it, study it. They give the test twice a year, in April and in August. It used to be you had to go to a DEC office to take it, but since COVID, now it's online. It used to be maybe a month, 6 weeks later, you could get your score, now it's instant.
But how about practical things? I mean, you have to
So, this is my problem. I say, thank God I learned in Kentucky. In New York, you take the test online, and they, like I said, they give you every question. It's a no-brainer. You have a phone interview, they mail you a license. You may have never seen
that's ridiculous.
anything. So there's a lot of cagey stuff going on. Now again, to do birds, you have to have the federal license. The state license, if your state has one, is a requirement, is one of the requirements. You have to have actual, real experience that you get under a licensed rehabber, and I am in desperate need of volunteers. And if you're interested in getting a license, I will tailor all of your time towards that because we need more rehabbers. There are hardly any for birds. Of course, there's caging requirements, there's minimum standards. Like for the New York license, no one even knows what that is. For the federal, they do go by that. You have to have pictures of all your caging, dimensions, materials. You have to, they'll ask you what training you've had. There's nothing as specific required, but I did the Raptor Rehab School at University of Minnesota. I go to the New York State Wildlife Rehabilitation Council every year, and they have tons of really good training, some hands-on labs like with vets or super experienced rehabbers. And I go to NWRA, not every year, but same kind of thing. So there's stuff out there. I am willing to train anyone, but you gotta come to Lodi. So that's the problem. It's not that far. I come to Ithaca all the time. Yeah.
You call yourself a Raptor Rehabilitator, and that's fine, but all the birds I saw on there, beyond raptors, there were some passerines and stuff. We're all local, relatively local to our area. Did you get any birds from not local areas, a roadrunner, a condor, something?
Trying to think. Actually, I'm picking up a bird from the Wildlife Hospital tomorrow. It's been there since November. They named him Iowa because he's from Iowa. Hit by a tractor trailer truck that drove him all the way to Utica, and then gave him to my friend that's a rehabber there. But he's going to come to me for conditioning in my flight cages. But it's a red-tailed hawk. So I really haven't had any, but it happens. I've heard of, someone in Cleveland got this baby bird in, it was a baby flamingo. I just call them babies. It was obviously, could fly some. It had escaped from somewhere in Canada, and they wouldn't allow it to come back. And this is several years ago. I've heard of someone having a roadrunner. It was in some kind of you know, someone moved or something, is in a moving van or, so I've heard of that, but I haven't had any. And also, my presentation's a little misleading because I really, really, really like doing waterfowl, and I don't think I had a single waterfowl photo. And they're cute. Yeah.
How are you compensated for what you do, for gas money and so on?
If someone wants to donate. Yes, that's the thing with rehab. You're not paid, there's no funding. Now, I will say I'm very fortunate. The Triad Foundation right here in Ithaca gives me a pretty sizable grant every single year. Covers about a third of my expenses. The rest, you know, someone bring you a robin and here's $20. And honestly, I never asked for money. I mean, but if someone wants to give it to me, I do take it. I mean, I think I'm up to about $30,000 a year now to run my operation. I know last year just in food was $15,000, just for food. It's expensive. But it's, my husband and I are both retired airline captains and we don't have any kids. He has fancy cars, and I clean up bird poop. I buy expensive food to make that bird poop. So, yeah.
Can we share your email address in the meeting minutes so if people do want to follow up with you, they can get in touch with you?
Please, especially, and you know, a lot of my volunteers don't want to do the raptors, but they want to feed baby birds. You know, you sit down, you saw on there, you just put the food in their mouth. Now, they're gonna poop every time you feed, but you just pick them up, take the tissue out and toss it, put a new tissue in, plop them back down. It's easy, it's not physically hard. So if anyone wants to come feed baby birds.
Awesome.
And if you want to do the other ones, that's fine too. Because until, oh, you know, you're going to be doing ducks. Like, what? Until they see the ducks and everyone falls in love with them. So anything else?
Any other questions? All right.
Well, thank you, everyone.